Hello. I'm just putting it onto YouTube. There we go. That's it. Done. Now then. Okay, well, let's begin. Let's start off with our tefillah, and we'll go on from there. We'll have to share it. Sorry, forgot. There we go. All right. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אף החמן והסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, וכי די בהשתחוויה שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה. מה אנו ומחיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה, על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ועל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך, קרח ניחוח, ותציל עלינו, אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמינותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, כמאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני ייתן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לראות צונים רפי, וגאון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen, can you rtzon? Hi Vita, nice to see you, sweetie. Now then, okay, so what we're going to learn today is a beautiful learning from Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag. Let me get the sharing right, so I'll be able to share the screen properly. No, that's not the bit I want. 1 second, let's get it right. Here we are. One moment. That's it. Okay. All right, welcome, Bracha. Very nice to see you. Okay, we're going to start here. This is from Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag's writings. It's called the Birkat Shalom ala Torah on the Parashat Shavua. And they tend to be quite short, but they're very deep, in my humble opinion. So we're going to look at those today. So I'm going to just zoom in a bit so we're able to read it a bit more clearly. Okay? And I'll read the Hebrew text and translate. Okay? V'hinei am yatsa miMitzrayim, v'hinei kisad ein haaretz. Here's Balak getting freaked out because the people of Israel are coming up to his borders. All right? And this is what he says. He says, there's a people, they've come out of Egypt, and they're covering the eye of the land. All right? That's what he says. Now, Balak and Bilam actually represent the evil within us. And the way Rabbi Ashlag actually looks at the Torah as a whole is he actually says that the different elements which are speaking in the Torah are not historical, but they are actually representations of forces inside ourselves. The Zohar says exactly that. The Zohar says that the Torah is not a history book. It is in a meaning of how we relate to God. And so everything that we see in the Torah is actually, I wouldn't say metaphor, because I think it's more real than metaphor. but it's a description of inner processes, okay, using a specific language. All right, and the language that it uses sounds to us like historical description, but in fact it is not. Rabbi Ashlag writes, in fact, that there are 4 parts of the Torah: the written Torah, the Pshat, the Remez, Drash, and Sod, the halachic part of the Torah, the Midrash, and the Kabbalah. And each one of them actually has a different language. But we find that the language of Kabbalah, which is the language of roots and branches, is actually, when you begin to learn it, you begin to see it everywhere in the Torah. And this language is that everything that is in the physical world has a spiritual root. So when the sages wanted to discuss the spiritual consciousnesses that they could see within themselves, they couldn't find a language to discuss that, because it's not confined to time and space. But they were able, by using the branches in this world, to actually point to the spiritual worlds they were discussing. And this is the basis on which Rabbi Ashlag is actually interpreting the psukim, the verses of the Torah. Okay, so instead of seeing it as a historical thing, that there's a people who come out of Egypt and they're covering the eye of the land, he's saying there's a people who are coming out of the will to receive for yourself alone, Egypt, which is the Yetzer Hara, it's the will to receive for self alone, and it's covering the eye of the desire. Okay, and this is what he's actually going to say here. Yesh lefaresh, we need to explain this. Shasitra achra omeret, the other side. What's the other side? The framework of evil. The framework of evil is made up because when everybody is using their own Yetzer Hara, their own will to receive for themselves alone, it interconnects with everybody else's in a sort of synergistic way. All right, and this is because all of us are in fact one soul. We're all the soul of Adam. So we all influence each other. So if one person is using their will to receive for themselves alone, the Yetzer Hara, okay, he's tilting himself and the world to the side of negativity, all right, to the side of evil. And so when a lot of people are doing that, okay, we get what's called a framework of evil, and it's often referred to as the Sitra Achra, the other side. Why does it call it Sitra Achra and not Marechet HaTumah? Is because in general, they like to use, nice language. All right, so just calling it the other side is simply, you know what we mean. It's the will to receive ourselves alone, but we don't want to talk about it in that way. But when it's the Sitra Achra, it means the whole framework. Okay, so what is it saying? That is the people of Israel. What's the Israel? The neshama, yashar el, the soul. When it comes out of the governance of the will to receive for itself alone. Mitzrayim means the tzar, the narrow place, the narrow consciousness of my own selfishness. Okay, so when the soul has gone out of that narrow consciousness, Hinei kisat ein haaretz, okay, is covered up the eye of the land. Like it covers up the goodness that is in the will to receive. Okay? The will to receive oneself alone. How do we get trapped into it? How do we get trapped in our will to receive ourselves alone, our egoism, our selfishness? We get trapped there because there's light there. I mean, let's take, for example, somebody gets angry. All right? So why does people there are people who sort of like really go into anger, they really shout and yell and, lose it or whatever. Why do they do that? It's because there's an energy there and they feel powerful, they feel strong, they feel they're in charge, okay? And if they didn't feel those things, people wouldn't bother with it. People wouldn't get angry. All right. So there is energy, there is light also, not much of it, but it's still there in the framework of evil. ולכן הסטרה אחת מפחדת שעל ידי זה שהשם עוזר לעם ישראל, הם יכולים לבטל כל ישותו. So the framework of evil is concerned, it's afraid that by the fact that God is helping the people of Israel, what does it mean God is helping the people of Israel? When the people of Israel, the soul is working in the way it's meant to work, in affinity of form with God, okay, then there is a definite affinity of form, then the light of God can shine freely, okay, and that can nullify the whole being of the world to receive for itself alone. As the sages of blessed memory said, Asa mitzvah achat, ashrav shichrit atzmo bekol olam kulo lekaf zechut. Yes, if he does one mitzvah, happy is he that he pushed the scales over for himself and for all the world to the side of merit. Okay, we talked about earlier how it can happen if, God forbid, we do a sin. If we're using our will to receive for ourselves alone, we can push ourselves and the whole world to the side of negativity. But here, if we do one mitzvah, we're pushing ourselves and the whole world to the side of positivity. And in this case, if all of us were to act in concert, all right, together, we would be able to nullify not only our own klipot, but all the klipot that exist, the shells, the negative things that take us away from God. Okay, so far so good. Anybody got any questions? You can pop them in the chat or you can call out, whatever's good for you. All right? In the Zohar, next piece, all right? He's going to look at what it says in the Zohar. Shnityaetz Balak amar v'garshenu min haaretz. When he's consulting, who's he consults? He consults but Bilam, I think it was. I can't remember anyhow. Consults Bilam, let's say. He's taking consultation, all right? And he said, Agarshenu min haaretz, I'll drive him out of the land. Amar, he said, Ota madriga shel achuzim ba umin haaretz vadai. The spiritual state that Israel is connected with is from the Aretz. What's the Aretz? The Malchut. Okay? The Malchut has got two sides to it. The Malchut is the basis also of the will to receive, okay, which we've just seen. God forbid we can use it in a negative way, and that brings us into the klipot. But the soul doesn't want to do that. Israel is with soul. It wants to say no to the klipot, and it wants to work in faith instead. Now, when we fall into the traps of the will to receive for ourselves alone, it's called the Shekhinah Ba'afra. Then the Shekhinah is in the dust. Okay, the Shekhinah and the Malchut are synonymous. Okay, so that would be the Shekhinah is in the dust. But when we do the positive, when we do a positive action, okay, that means that we're raising up the Shekhinah, okay, and the Shekhinah is great, it's shining, it's feeling terrific, okay? All right, so the Malchut is the place of choice, all right? And the way to deal with our will to receive for ourselves alone is through faith. So when the Israelites, okay, are holding on, what are they holding on to? The Aretz, okay? What is the Aretz? The Malchut. The way that Israel connects with the Malchut is through faith. V'zehu ki atzum hu mimeni v'dai. And when we hold on to faith, it is for sure more powerful than the will to receive. It's more powerful than logic. Okay, it's more powerful than rationale. And we've seen this so many times in the history of Israel. I mean, thank God. I mean, you know, faith is just what keeps this country here. It's incredible, the incredible power of faith that we all have. I mean, the faith, the 6-day war just comes, you know, to mind, but there's been other times as well. Tremendous, tremendous faith. Personally, I think that the way we live here in Eretz Israel all the time is based on faith. We're surrounded by the most horrible enemies, you know, and we stay here. That if that's not a definition of faith, I really don't know what is. Okay? It's a tremendous faith just to be in Eretz Israel. Who could possibly fight against and stand against Israel? The aspect of faith is, of course, stronger than the aspect of the will to receive. Where do we know this from? We know this from the fight with Amalek. Amalek is considered the number one enemy. It's the head of all the klipot. Okay, it's the biggest will to receive for ourselves alone. It's the number one enemy. And what do we learn? When Moses lifted up his arms in faith, then the children of Israel prevail even over Amalek. So if they prevail over Amalek, then for sure they're going to prevail over Balak. Okay. So he says, because of this, I want to drive them out of the land. Here it means he wants to take them away from their spiritual level, which is the Malchut. Sorry, but I think I read that right. If I drive them out of the land and they're driven out from it, what does he mean? He means if he can cause them to sin, then I can do whatever I want with them. In other words, Balak, according in the Zohar, Balak is recognizing that our spiritual state is faith. If we don't cling on to faith, then we're liable to fall into all sorts of any directions. Okay? ויש לפרש במה שאמר שמדרגת מלכות יותר חזקה ממדרגתו, משום שמלכות נקראת אמונה למעלה מהדעת. And we need to explain in what way does he say, or why does he say that the spiritual level of Malchut is stronger than his spiritual level? Because the Malchut is designated as above, like faith above rationale. Okay, faith is stronger than rationale. Why is faith stronger than rationale? Because faith is what you give, okay, and therefore it's in affinitive form with the Creator. And rationale is logic, it's what you receive, and therefore it is the will to receive. It's therefore not so much in affinitive form. Perush Davar, explanation. As the sages of blessed memory said, the sages said, don't let a man say, I can't stand the taste of pig, therefore I won't eat it. But I like the taste, but the Torah forbade it. Okay? That is called above knowledge, that you do it from faith. Okay? I mean, for most of us, I would imagine, certainly I grew up in a religious household, so even the idea of eating pig was horrific. Okay? But there are other mitzvot. which we don't feel those feelings of disgust for. Okay? Gossip, for example. A lot of people enjoy gossip. A lot of people enjoy sort of a mild lashon hara. Okay? And yet we should say, I like having a gossip about the neighbors, okay? And the Torah forbids it. So I mustn't. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not that I don't like having a gossip about the neighbors, but I like having a gossip about the neighbors, but the Torah forbids it. Okay, it's from that place. Do you see what I'm saying? That's to do the work from the place of giving and from the place of faith. The issue is that our logic, our basic way of functioning as a created being is not able to agree to go against our will to receive ourselves alone. Because the nature of a person is that when he really wants something and he's got to let go of that pleasure, he wants to know why. Why should I give up what I want to do? What does my ego or my body, okay, or my personality, or whatever it is, gain from the fact that I stop myself from enjoying myself? And then we need to answer ourselves and say, either from Yirat Hashem, okay, that we have reverence for God, that we have Yirah, which means we obey the mitzvot. Also, that by the fact that he lets go of this pleasure, okay, he stops himself suffering the sufferings of Gehinnom. And Gehinnom is not some sort of fiery furnace after we die. Gehinnom is when you wake up in the night and you wish you hadn't done whatever it was you'd done. That's Gehinnom. You know, when your cheeks are burning and you think, oh my gosh, you know, and you want to, dive under the blankets and stick the pillow over your head, all right, because you feel so ashamed from what you've done. The Gehinnom is the burning feeling in your cheeks when you feel ashamed. All right? So that's what that means. He weighs up the taste of the pleasure, how much it's worth, the Tama Yisuim, and the taste of the suffering that he'll suffer for that pleasure. He says it's not worth it. But the suffering is definitely greater. So he says it's not really worth it to suffer a lot of suffering for the tiny little pleasure that I'll get in such a little time. And he feels that the suffering will be everlasting suffering in Gehinnom. And again, it's not fiery furnaces after we die. It's feeling that I did something that was not right for me, that I'm sorry about, that when I look back, I don't feel good with myself. That's what it means, all right? Or from the aspect of love. Or from the aspect of love, that for the fact that I let go for a little time of the taste of this pleasure, whatever it is, he'll receive a much greater pleasure and length of days, which are joys which belong to the aspect of giving of the Olam Haba, next world. Bishvil Eilu, Shnei Tamim, Im Adam shokel mitzvah keneged avera, יש לו כוח להתגבר לתענוג. For these two reasons, if a person weighs up the mitzvah against the sin, he's got the power to overcome the illicit pleasure. אבל זה במצב הזה, הגם שזה מובן לגוף, ויכול לבוא יצר הרע לערבב לו החשבונות. Well, these sort of accountings that he's making are understandable to the ego, but of course, the yetzer hara can certainly come along and mess up his accounting. כיוון שהכל הולך על חשבון של הרצון לקבל, because it all goes on the accounting of the will to receive. אז יש כוח ביד היצר הרע לבלבל אותו לטשטש הציורים של גן עדן וגיהינום. And so therefore there is power in the will to receive for oneself alone, which is the yetzer hara, to confuse a person and to mess up his, his idea of how he can come into affinity of form with God, or the suffering he feels when he is in separation. אבל כשאדם זכה שכל כוח העיכוב שלו הוא מטעם מלכות שמיים, אדם שזכה שלא צריך עבור עצמו שום דבר. But if we do it on a different basis, okay, what would be a different basis? When a person merits that all his power of withholding from doing the wrong thing is malchut shamayim, right? He's not making an accounting now of what he'll suffer or what he'll gain, all right? But he's doing it from the governance of shamayim for the sake of heaven. Now his accounting is on a totally different basis. He's saying, well, I'm actually think that I don't need anything for myself. I only really want to serve God. I really don't think I'm not thinking about what consequences there are to myself, either the positive or the negative. I just want to do it for the sake of God. Okay? There's no place where the yetzer hara can come and quarrel with him. It's just a totally different paradigm. Okay? You see, when we're making our self-accounting, say, well, I'll feel better. I mean, we all do this as well. Okay, we say, well, if I do the mitzvah, I'll feel better with myself. If I do the avirah, I'll feel awful with myself afterwards. And I don't think I really want that. And we make those accountings, all right? But if we have to know that when we do it that way, the yetzer hara can come and get us muddled up and put his own oar in. But if our accounting isn't based on that at all, our accounting is simply based on what is good for God, what is good for the Shekhinah, what is good for the whole of humanity, okay, and not what's good for me, then that's a totally different basis, okay? Hakol b'chtei lashpia, okay? Everything is only for the sake of giving. There's no basis on which the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, can come and quarrel with him, sorry. There's nothing to give the yetzer hara. What is Balak planning to do? He wants to drive him out from the land, from the dargah of malchut shamayim, that the malchut is being used only for the sake of shamayim. Then I'll be able to overcome them because I cause them to sin. But the eretz, the malchut shamayim, when we use the malchut only for the sake of heaven, it's stronger than I am. Okay, from that level, it's impossible to get them to sin in any way whatsoever. And that's from the aspect of the heart, because the heart is given to God. And when the heart is given to God, there's no way that the will to receive for itself alone can get involved. Likewise, it's the same with the mind. He needs to believe that the Holy Blessed One hears prayer. Hainu, אם האדם מפנה את עצמו מכל דבר הוא רוצה להתדבק בשם, if a person absolutely lets go of his own self from everything, and he only wants to cling to God, Hashem yitchabeh elav v'yikarvehu, then God will cling to him, God will join with him and bring him close to him. Besod haba litaher masayinoto. In the meaning of, one who comes to purify himself, they help him. Kamo shekatuv, kamo sheomer Zohar Kadosh, as the Holy Zohar says, how do they help him? Benishmata kadisha, to his holy soul. Hainu shakodesh baruch hu mitgaleh elav, the Holy Blessed One reveals himself to him. Vaz mimele hu shochech mikol ha'olam v'zocher rak et Hashem levado. And when that happens, in any case, he forgets about the rest. He forgets about the sins. He forgets about the sitra achra. He forgets about all the other considerations, and he only remembers God alone. So what do we see here? We see here an amazing process, in my view. Okay, Balak, of course, represents a will to receive for ourselves alone, maybe something stronger, maybe the Sitra Achra, a whole framework of it, okay? And it actually wants to take Israel away from its purpose. It wants to take the soul away from the aspect of being connected with the Malchut, being connected with the Shekhinah through faith, okay? That's what it wants to do, because it knows that when the soul is connected with faith, and we are identifying with that, we're connected with faith, there is nothing he can do to gain his ends, okay? There's nothing that the will to receive for itself alone can do at that point, okay? So Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag is really teaching us how to relate to this will to receive for itself alone, how to relate to the illicit pleasures that the will to receive for itself alone wants us to get. And first of all, it tells us that we absolutely have to go for the sake of heaven, for the sake of giving, for fulfilling the mitzvah, and not for ourselves alone. But he gives us a very clear examples of how sometimes we are actually doing it for the sake of giving, but the real basis is our worry about ourselves. That I'm not wanting to do a sin, but my main focus is how I will feel if I do a mitzvah, or how will I feel if I do a sin. And that's a very shaky basis, because the will to receive for itself alone is still mixed up there. All right. So then he says, let go of that basis and do it completely for the sake of heaven. And then it's unassailable. Okay. And if we find it's impossible, because it's not easy to go against our own wills to receive, then the right thing to do is to pray and ask God to help us. And we have to truly believe that God hears our prayer. Okay. And then when he hears our prayer, he'll bring us close, and then we'll be facing a totally different direction. We'll be facing God. Okay. And then we won't be having to deal, it won't interest us, the other stuff. So that's a good suggestion. Okay, so as we know, Balak hired Bilam to go and curse the people. And as we know, the curses turn into blessings. In my view, they're the most beautiful blessings, absolutely beautiful blessings in the whole of the Tanakh. I mean, we get this wicked man blessing us. It's so extraordinary. The whole idea is extraordinary. Okay, and one of the most famous blessings is, of course, when Bilam is up on this high mountain and he looks over the plain and he sees the tents of Israel spread out before him. Now, I actually did prepare, and I got the, here it is, the Tanakh ready, so I can, there we go, I can share it. Okay. And I mean, it actually starts, the blessings start in chapter 23. Okay, but this was the piece that I wanted to look at here. Let me just get that out of the way for you. All right. והיה בלעם כי טוב בעיני השם לברך את ישראל, ולא הלך כפעם בפעם לקראת נחשים וישת אל המדבר פניו. So Balaam saw that it was pleased God to bless Israel, so he didn't go as at other times to meet with enchantments, and he set his face towards the wilderness. ויישא בלעם את עיניו, and Balaam lifted up his eyes. והיה ישראל שוכן לשבטיו, and he saw Israel dwelling according to its tribes. ותהי עליו רוח אלוהים, and the Spirit of God came upon him. ויישא משלו, and he took up his parable, ויאמר, and he said, נאום בלעם בנו באור, ונאום הגבר שתו מעין. This is the saying of Balaam, the son of Beor, the speech of the man whose eye is opened. Na'um shomer imrei el, the saying of one who hears the words of God. Hashem machazeh shadai yechezeh, who will see the visions of the Almighty. Nofel glui enayim, he falls down yet with open eyes. Ma tovu olecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. K'nachalim nitayu, as Nechalim is usually, it's usually brooks, but here it's translated as valleys. I'm not quite sure why. Stretched out. Kaganot alei nahal, as gardens planted by the riverside. Ka'ahalim nata Hashem, as aloes planted by God. Ka'arazim alei mayim, as cedars by the water. Yizal mayim midalyo, water shall flow from his branches. V'zal oba mayim rabim, and his seed shall be in many waters. Ve'arom ma'agag malko, his king shall be higher than Agag. Who was Agag? He was the king of the Amalekites. V'tinasei malchuto, and his kingdom shall be exalted. And we said that Israel, standing firm in faith, is stronger than Amalek. Okay? Wow. El motzi'o mimitzrayim, k'to'afot ra'em lo, God who brought him forth from Egypt is for him like the horns of the wild ox. Yochel goyim tzarav, he shall eat up the nations that are his adversaries. Okay, who are the adversaries? The will to receive ourselves alone, inside him, not outside, inside. Okay? Va'atzmotehem yigram yigarem v'chitzov yimchatz, and he shall break their bones in pieces and pierce them through with his arrows. Okay? And okay, well, this is all inner work. Kara shachav ka'ari klavi. He lay down, he crouched down and lay down as a lion, as a lioness. Mi kimenu, who shall raise him up? Mevarechacha baruch v'orecha ru. Those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. Well, I think it's, phenomenal. It's beautiful. It really is. So let's go now back to our learning with Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag. Oops, I need to do share again. There we go. Now, that's it. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov. And again, it's using physical reality to describe inner reality. Okay? It's not history. How good are your tents, O Jacob? So what is Jacob? Inyan Yaakov u'melashon akavayim v'sof. Yaakov is from the language of the last part of the body. It's like the lowest aspect of all, the heel. Okay? Akavayim is the heels, all right? The end of the body. So it's the heel. Do you remember when Jacob was born, he came out holding the heel of Esau, all right? So Rabbi Baruch Shalom relates it to matzav hashiflut achi garua she'adam margish, the lowest possible state that a person can feel. He feels, it's like, he feels that I'm in a state, and it happens to all of us, okay, that I don't have anything in my hand from which I can get joy. And he says, but he says, surely the purpose of creation is to give goodness to the created beings. Okay, why don't I feel like that? And we also learn that the greatest joy and pleasure is in the Torah and the mitzvot. And he's in a situation, he's in a state when he doesn't feel any taste or joy in Torah and mitzvot. And even though it's written, they are our life and length of our days, you can't see it. And even in the material side of life, it's written there is some pleasure, like we talked about, okay, because the holiness is shining there in the aspect of a little bit of light to keep us going. Even that he can't feel any pleasure in material things, physicality. And he feels upset, he feels fed up with life, because he doesn't feel any taste in it. And if it happens to him like that, he needs to believe with great intention. They gave it to him from above to feel such a situation. Why? So that he will develop a lack. A place from which he can pray and say, oh God, I can't stand this anymore. Please help me with this. Please fill up the lack I feel. Give me joy. Your dwelling places, O Israel. Ki Yisrael, for it is Israel. Because Israel, for it is Israel, he feels that he wants only to work for the sake of heaven, which is called Yashar El. Zot omeret, im ein chisaron, ein miloi. If there is no lack, there can be no fulfillment. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How good are your tents, O Jacob. Matzav chisaron, mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling place of Israel. That's the state of lack. And then, okay, I'll say it again. How good are your tents, O Jacob, which is the state of lack. Mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling places, O Israel. That's the fulfillment. So how does Rabbi Baruch Shalom actually relate? This is very interesting. Ohalecha, what's a tent? Okay, a tent is a container, basically. All right, it's a vessel. Okay, so he's saying, how goodly are your vessels, O Jacob? How goodly are your vessels, even when they are at the end, the very last part, the bit where we feel so fed up and can't see any light. There's no pleasure, either in Torah mitzvot or in the physical world. Okay, so we say we can't get any lower than that, but it's a tent, it's a vessel. Okay, and so a person, when he's in that situation, he needs to pray to God and ask him for help. Okay, but to understand also, to absolutely believe with complete intention that this state was given to him on purpose, that he will develop a lack so that he will see the light in Torah and mitzvot, that he will want the light that God wants to give him, okay? And then it will become Mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling places, O Israel. And can you see inside the word Mishkanotecha, you've got the word Shekhinah, the indwelling place of God inside Israel. Okay, because then if you come first to the lack for God, then you come to the fulfillment. I started work with a very interesting guy who is not religious. He's secular, and he was actually an international footballer who was working for Israel. He was footballing for Israel, playing for Israel, I think, yeah. And then at some point he had a tendon injury, and he's now become a trainer for football and for also other things as well, because the same basic coaching applies. You know, still got to get through your own barriers, whatever field you're in. Okay, and he's become very interested in looking at this material and looking at also messages you can also see very clearly also in the Tanya. And he said to me today, he said, you know something, people are so thirsty for this information because everybody is fed up with the superficial. And I thought, wow, that's a perfect description of this. God has brought the world to a place of such lowliness, of such where the light of God is just not there. You know, it's so lowly now. Our minds and hearts are filled up with such nonsense the whole time. Okay, it's such a low place that it creates the vessel that we really want the light of God. We really want the flow of consciousness to flow. And I can really see that this is happening. Baruch Hashem. I mean, the downside is being in the, you know, in the lack of the light. But the positive side is the fact that thirst is developing, and that are helping people really reach out and look for this material. So I think that's pretty wonderful. Yeah, okay. Next one, all right. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael, kenachalim natayu. How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel, like they stretch out like the English said the valleys, and I thought that was the rivers, but I don't think it really matters. Okay, Rashi. Our sages have told us, from the blessings of that wicked man, we can learn what was really in his heart. Okay, that's interesting. Inyan Balak otiot kabel. Okay, the Balak, his name, if you take the letters of his name and you simply turn it round, you get receive. Okay, which means that his characteristic is the will to receive oneself alone. Kabbalah Atzmit. Bil'am, what's the meaning of Bil'am? Ulev Am. What does that mean? It belongs to the Lev HaEven, the heart of stone. What's the heart of stone? The heart of stone is that we can do a correction for most of the sparks that fell in the time of the breaking of the vessels. All right, most of them, not all of them. And there's about, I think it's 32, yeah, Lev, and 32 sparks which are impossible for us to correct. And they belong to the die-hard will to receive for itself alone. And only God itself can correct them. And so Bil'am, Rabbi Ashlag relates it to that heart of stone, that the biggest core of our will to receive for ourselves alone. So it's not just Bilam has got that, we've got that inside us as well, because this is one of the teachings that we're learning, that everything that we're learning outside is also inside. So Balak, we've got the Balak side, which is our will to receive for ourselves alone. We've also got that hard core of the heart of stone, which is within us as well. And the Zohar tells us that at the end of the Tikkun, God will himself take away the heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh instead. And that's from Yechezkel. So Baruch sent to Bilam and told him, listen, there's these people who come out from Egypt. That is to say, the people of Israel came forth from the Klippa. The Klippa is the dominance of the will to receive for itself alone, which we call Mitzrayim. Okay, that narrow place, which is the Kabbalah Atzmit, which is our will to receive for ourselves alone. Therefore, there will not be from today onwards governance to those who are under the will to receive for itself alone. This is what we've come out of Egypt means. All right, we're not dominated by that anymore. And since the Bilam means he's the people of the heart of stone, he wants to mess up this tikkun. He wants to mess up what's happened. He wants to, he wants to spoil it. And therefore, he was forced to bless. As the sages said, a bad angel has still got to answer Amen against his will. Therefore he said, Ma tovu olecha Yaakov. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob. She'ohel hu b'chinat Torah. Because the tent is the aspect of Torah, b'chinat katnut, b'chinat Yaakov, which is where we start on our journey, when we still, Torah means instruction on how to deal with our will to receive for ourselves alone. And during the time of our journey, we have ups and we have downs, okay? And that's the aspect of Yaakov. Jacob, he also had plenty ups and downs in his life. Finally, through the ups and downs, through the journey of the way of Torah, we come to the dwelling places, O Israel. Through the ups and downs, through our difficulties, through our trying to observe Torah and mitzvot, okay? And if you're religious, you keep the Torah and mitzvot. And if you're not religious, keep at least love your neighbor as yourself, okay? Because that itself includes the whole Torah, all right? So do your best, okay, from wherever you're starting. That's what it means. That through this comes the building of the sanctuary of Klal Yisrael, of all Israel. And actually, this ascent and descent, this each time there is the way and there is the destination. Okay, Katnut is the way, Gadlut is the destination. As my father of blessed memory said, Vahi bin Aaron v'yomer Moshe kuma u'binucha yoma shuva. And when the ark traveled, Moses said, arise. And when it rested, he said, rest. When there is, sit down. When in the time of work, there is an aspect of arising, standing up. Benucha, when it rested, it said shuva, rest or sit down. Hinat yeshiva. Ki Torah mitzad echadu katnut. For the Torah on one side is the way, is the difficulties. Ki bizman shemargishim chisaron as lomdim Torah. When we feel a lack, then we turn to the Torah to help us. It's through our lacks that we come to fulfillments. If only in a place where there's a lack can we have anything to fulfill. And when a person is fulfilled with the tent of Torah, as over Lemishkanotecha Israel, then he passes to your dwelling places, O Israel. But when he's sitting in the sanctuary, and it says when he rested, he said sit or stay, something. When he's already acquired, he's already reached a place, then it's sort of stationary, okay? And there's no further movement upwards. Only when traveling is there movement from stage to stage. Lachen, tekef kashabal shleimut, tekef tzorich lishtadel imtzor kisaron. So what is the way of Israel? What's the way of Jacob? Therefore, as soon as we come to a moment of completion, we now need to work again to find another lack. Okay, only that way we can move forwards again, because there's never any end. Okay? On the contrary, there's only growing in the pleasure of giving. That's what it is. It's not that we think, oh, there's never any end. It means no. It means that there's always another level at which we can come to a place of goodness, a place of giving, a place of joy. We're able to help God and help others. Okay? So, the moment he reaches Mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling places, O Israel, and he's become stationary, he needs to search again and find again a lack. So what does he do? He goes back into the tent of Torah. And again, he looks at Torah not from an intellectual place, what I can understand with my mind and all that kind of stuff. No, but from a simple place of faith. What does this mean? Torah is not meant to be intellectual study only. I know it does have its intellectual side, and a lot of people enjoy that. And I enjoy that too. Okay? It wouldn't be, you want to enjoy Torah. Okay? But it's the real aspect of Torah is not the intellectual pleasure. That's just a side bonus. Okay? The real aspect is how do we put it into practice? How do we put our learning of Torah into the practice of helping others, into the practice of love your neighbor as yourself, into the practice of compassion. Okay? That's what it means. That's what the real instruction is about. Okay? We want to learn how to do that. So the Torah should not be like some sort of intellectual learning but doesn't have any application. Okay? Not at all. On the contrary, the Mishnah says, don't be like somebody whose wisdom is more than his good deeds, is like a tree with loads and loads and loads of branches, but very little roots. Comes a big puff of wind, poof, and it all falls down. Okay? It's much better to be a tree with fewer branches, but many, many roots. And you create the roots by putting it into practice. So whatever it is we learn, we need to apply it. Okay? That's what it means. All right? So to go back into the tent of Torah is to go back into learning the material, of course, and then learning how to apply it. And again, when he's found a new lack of a way, supposing he wants to try to learn to come to God more cleanly without his will to receive himself alone driving him crazy. He wants to come to the word to learn to serve God, in purity for its own sake. Okay, that's a very difficult stage to come to. Okay, so he wants to. The more you learn Torah, the more you learn, especially the inner meanings of Torah, the more you want to do that. Okay, and that you have to try. and then hopefully you get to another stage of fulfillment, okay, which it comes to Shleimut. And that is the aspect of the Mishkan, okay, the sanctuary, which is a dwelling place for the Shekhinah. And then what does he do again? Again, he doesn't allow himself to rest on his laurels, but again, he looks for another lack and looks for another level, a better level, a cleaner level, a more pure level from which he's able to serve God. Until he becomes completely a tzaddik and he reaches his own finish of the tikkun. The beginning of coming out of all our wills to receive ourselves alone starts from the coming out of Egypt, okay? But it doesn't begin when he actually leaves, no. Yetziat Mitzrayim, the coming out of Egypt, begins not when he's already left. If he only just wants to get out of Egypt, or even if he wants and he wants to get out, but he can't, but he's got enough power, he's got enough strength to pray to God that God should take him out of Egypt, then he's already started off on his way out of the Egypt onto the true path. Okay, wonderful, Baruch Hashem. All right, so I think we've done enough. That was really beautiful. Rabbi Baruch Shalom, thank you very much. Okay, anybody?
Yedida.
Yeah.
Yedida?
Yeah.
I often wonder why was Bilam and Bilak? Why is this story stuck in there in the Torah?
Why is the story what, love?
Why is it put where it is in the Torah? You know, after Kuchat last week. I often wondered, and it's completely without Moses in it. I don't know why it was put in this place in the Torah.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I must confess, I never really thought about it before. I suppose it's because it's like the interaction between the children of Israel and the other nations, you know, like they had to fight the Amorites and the Sihon and Melech Bashan, the king of Bashan, and they were moving on their way out of Egypt. So I suppose it's to do with that. But it's a very interesting question. Oh, you know what? Yes, of course, because it was Bilam who gave the advice for Baal Peor to try to entice the children of Israel away from the service of God, and that happened just when they arrived at the plains of Moab, just before Moses died, and he gave the last teachings in Devarim. So I think it's not from the blessings could have. You're right. The blessings could have happened at any time on their way out. But it was the last bit, actually, because that was what was really in his heart. He didn't want to bless the people at all. He wanted to curse them, all right? But he knew that he wasn't able to. So long as they were on their high spiritual level, they were untouchable. But when he was able to cause them to sin with the women of Moab and the whole issue of Baal Peor, that's how he did it. Yeah. Good question. Well done. Okay. Hi, Vita.
Thank you so much. I just want to say how much I appreciate your lessons.
Lovely. Lovely. Thanks, Vita. It's lovely to see you. Really is. Very nice. Lovely.
Thank you, Ida.
Okay, great. Lovely.
Bye.
Okay, have a lovely Shabbat, everybody.
Yes, Shabbat Shalom to you too.
Shabbat Shalom. Okay, all right. Bye then.
Do you have time for one question? Yedida?
Yeah?
Do you have time for one question?
Yeah, sure. Do you remember